welcome everybody here to our Catholic Citizens of Illinois September 2023 Luncheon. I'd like to start by just with a few announcements, and then we're going to have our grace said by our chaplain, Father Finelli. So, announcement number one. Our next luncheon will be here at the Carlisle, and our speaker will be Mary Fiorito. Who's quite involved with the pro-life movement. And it's also the Feast of Our Lady of Fatima that day. So that's a wonderful day to come out. That's Friday, October 13th. Our banquet, our annual banquet, also being held here at the Carlisle, in a much bigger room, I'm sure, is going to be on November 14th, and our speaker will be Austin Ruse, the president of CFAM, who's coming in here from Washington, D.C. Austin's pretty well known. He's battled for issues, mainly life issues, for many years in D.C., particularly at the UN. He's going to have a lot to tell us. As you know, Catholic Citizens of Illinois' mission statement is that we are the voice in the public square. We want to be a Catholic voice in the public square. We like to keep ourselves apprised of the issues which are current in Illinois, in other states, in the federal government, in our courts, also cultural issues too. We see these things, we study them, we comment on them. We have wonderful speakers come to also comment on them. Our speaker today, who will be introduced later, is one such person who can provide that sort of perspective for us. Now I'd like to introduce Father Finelli to give us a grace.
Let's say the Angelus first, huh? Angel Lord declared to Mary,
she should receive by the Holy Spirit.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
Behold the handmaid of the Lord.
Be it done unto me according to thy word.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
And the Word was made flesh. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God.
That we may be made worthy of the promise of
Let us
Christ.
pray, pour forth, we beseech thee, O Lord, make grace in our hearts, that we, your holy incarnation of Christ, thy Son, was made known by the message of the angel, made by the passion and cross, but to the glory of the resurrection, the same Christ the Lord.
Amen.
Let us pray. O God, keep us strong in our faith, keep us strong in the understanding of the goodness of every child born. We ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I have a couple announcements before we do introduce Joe this afternoon. The first announcement is that in case anybody is looking to pass on their dessert today because of Friday fast or something, it is Our Lady's birthday, so make sure you feast on your dessert this afternoon. Right. Secondly, before we introduce Joe, I want to introduce a special person that is here today, and that is St. Padre Pio. We have a relic of Padre Pio over to my right and your left. That is part of our family. So my grandfather knew Padre Pio. And this morning I was visiting with Pacelli Pujols, who some of you may know and has been to this luncheon many times. He's very sick. And I just asked you, maybe call him Padre Pio or your favorite saint today to intercede for him and his family in these very troubling times for them. And I think that was the last announcement. Well, the last one is October 13th. That's tentative right now, being here at the Carlisle. There may be a conflict that we were just made aware of. So our October luncheon may not be here on October 13th. So we'll just be posted and check the emails. And then, as a reminder, November 14th is our annual banquet featuring Austiners. So Joe Lazar is the faith network leader of Vision 2020 of Illinois for the Cook County region. He began leading 40 Days for Life vigils in conjunction with Vision 2020 in 2017 and has continued every year since. Their current Chicago vigil effort is the only consistent vigil that runs year-round in the city of Chicago. He also created the first Saturdays for Life effort 1 year ago, which is an organized prayer effort in front of a Chicago abortion clinic on the first Saturday of every month. Joe has seen countless babies saved on the sidewalk since 2017 and has watched as the former FPA abortion clinic closed its doors while their prayer and counseling efforts were occurring. Joe is an Assyrian whose family immigrated from Baghdad, and parents are here as well, to escape religious persecution as Christians of the Middle East. The Assyrians make up the Chaldean Catholics, which is the Chaldean rite of the Catholic Church. Apart from his work dedicated to ending the killing of innocent Muslims, Joe is also involved with the Iraqi Christian Relief Council, which provides direct aid to the persecuted Christians who remain in the Middle East region. Joe's full-time work consists of piloting commercial passenger aircrafts. He spends much of his free time with his wife and 2 boys who they homeschool in the far northwest suburbs of Chicago, and his family attends a Trinity Mass at St. Peter's Church in Bowl, where he serves as an acolyte with both his boys. I'm proud to be the one to introduce Joe, just for all of his work that he's done, advancing the cause and saving lives here in the Chicago area. Joe, thank you.
Friends, I just want to ask you, is it better for you in the back if I use the microphone or if I just talk to you like this? What do you prefer?
Without.
Okay. Taking David's advice, it will help for the recording, so I'm going to follow David's advice on that. So, thank you. I'd like to just begin my talk just with a simple sign of the cross. Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Judge me, O God, and distinguish my cause from the nation that is not holy. Deliver me from the unjust and deceitful man. Psalm 43. I want to thank the Catholic citizens of Illinois for inviting me today. I'm truly honored to be here. I've been following Catholic citizens and their work, particularly encouraged by their thoughtfulness and their boldness. And so I'm really honored to be speaking to this group today. I know some of you, but not all of you. As David mentioned, I'm a co-leader at Vision 2020 of Illinois. We started that effort, grassroots pro-life effort, in 2017, following the passage of the HB 40 bill, which made abortion subsidized in Illinois by all of us here, unfortunately. And our mission is simple. It's unite churches, close abortion clinics. It's really that simple. David also mentioned I'm an Assyrian. If you're not familiar, the Assyrians are the modern Assyrians are the ancestors of the ancient Ninevites that the prophet Jonah reluctantly came to evangelize to. And I'm thankful that he did. Now the Assyrians have a pretty unique sanctity of life mission and cause of their own. To highlight this, the Assyrians have had 3 genocides in the last 100 years. 1915, 1933, and and 2014 being probably the most tragic because our largest population in the northern half of Iraq of 1.5 million was really expelled from the homeland, leaving about 100,000 remaining. And that area is still in turmoil. Some have come back, but their fields have been poisoned with chemicals so they can't grow there. The girls have been kidnapped. Priests have been killed. It's on that level. So please keep the Syrians and the Christians in the Middle East in your prayers. They need it. And they are great witnesses for our time. And while I was working at that time, 2014, I was beginning to help and work with the Iraqi Christian Relief Council, helping them with donations to provide aid for these beleaguered Christians, our brothers and sisters in the Middle East. And I was a volunteer at the Women's Center, Pregnancy Center on Cicero Avenue. And during that time, I saw many a mom and dad come into the pregnancy center there. And I was sometimes the first person to talk to some of them, and I saw their confusion. Many of them had gone to an abortion clinic before coming there that day, and I began to see how much they'd been lied to. And it was during that time that God really spoke to me and made it clear to me that He had laid out a mission for me here on the streets of Chicago, on the sidewalks, in front of the abortion clinics, that I'd been spared really from the terrible, treacherous life that a lot of my ancestors had been in the Middle East, and so He wanted me to serve them. It was clear to me, He wanted me to serve Him in this way. And you know, that came full circle for me one day in particular. I came to the Family Planning Associates abortion clinic that is now closed on Milwaukee Avenue to counsel and pray for a couple of hours before going to work. And two girls came up, as I'd seen so many times before. Two young girls came for an appointment, and I tried to speak to them. And they laughed at me, actually. And they went inside for that appointment. And a little bit after that, one of them came back outside. She started to talk to me. She was curious what would propel this man to come out here and want to pray and talk to us. It was odd to her. And as we began to talk, I realized from looking at her and the way she was speaking, because we're pretty good at sniffing each other out, I'm like, this isn't a Syrian. So I began to speak to her in our language, and her jaw just about dropped to the ground. She couldn't believe it. Well, there's less than 500,000 of the Assyrians in the United States. We're that small of a room, very small room. So we continued talking. And it got to the point where she was actually able to convince her friend to come outside from the clinic before she completed this terrible procedure. And I showed her friend my phone, and I had a picture of my family on that phone. And it turned out these girls this wasn't their first time there at the abortion clinics. They both had abortions before. And I said to the girl, I said, you know this is wrong. We've been talking now for over an hour. Could today be the day that God has given you a chance to turn your life around? I said, I'll make you a deal. Why don't you cancel that abortion appointment, and I'll give this child some siblings. I'll give them a family. And she thought about it long and hard. Sadly and tragically. Now, I was going to let my wife know eventually. I figured she'd be okay with it. She was at the time giving out ultrasounds at the Women's Center. I knew she'd understand. We'd get to that. But tragically, she decided to continue with that appointment that day. And I pray for her sometimes, and I hope that maybe our interaction that day perhaps spared her from a third visit to one of these centers. And we're in such a time, I think that story begins to highlight really the confusion that we are enduring right now. We're in a time of such confusion, right? That confusion has just become so pervasive. We hear these terms all the time. You've heard many of these terms I'm about to say. Liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Marxist, Neo-Marxist, Neocon, environmentalist, conservationist, domestic terrorist. And I even had someone once tell me that they were a Hindu Christian. I don't know what that is. But in this time of confusion, which is so rampant, there's at least one type of confusion that I've taken notice of in recent years that's particularly odd. And that is the idea that some would ascribe to a system of beliefs, such as some of the ones I just listed here, and yet their actions and their words are completely antithetical to this belief system they accept. Now, this is just so odd. What would propel an intelligent human being to take on an identity that they hate. And this is so rampant, in fact, that I couldn't help but notice in recent years, we even, sadly, and of course this is not always the case, but we do have some who have even found themselves in the clergy, in our good clergy, who promote ideas and condone ideas and even advocate for ideas that are anti-Catholic. How did we get here to this time of confusion? And how heartbreaking that this last point I made must be for our good and holy clergy who are promoting the truth and must now meander through the sea of confusion. How tragic and heartbreaking that must be for them. We have some of those good clergy here today. And so, this brings to mind this phrase that we so often hear, that's become cliche, it's cringeworthy now. So-and-so is fill in the blank in name only, right? We're tired of hearing that. And now the danger here, I think, for us, I'm in a group of, this audience is composed of mostly very traditional-minded Catholics. I think the trap for this can be for us, that we would become so mired in frustration and become so infuriated about this confusion that we become paralyzed. We become indignant, rightfully so in many cases. We feel compelled to publicly rebuke this confusion, to provide clarity in this sea of nonsense. And the danger is that we would become so mired in that frustration that we would not have the excess capacity to do what we must do. And see, the devil, he looks at this and he says, let them be contemplatives. Let them contemplate their piety and even justly rebuke the confusion which I sow so long as they do not have the capacity to do what they must do. And the devil laughs. Now, I know my audience here. This audience doesn't need to just simply hear a long list of all the terrible things going on right now and then get a pat on the back that we're on the right team. Thank goodness we are. No. This audience doesn't need that. We need, this is a serious audience, and I know that. I know some of you. And we need an assessment of the battlefront, and we need a response that will work, that's realistic, and that we can accomplish, and that is serving to the Lord. That's what we need, right? And I think most of you know about a lot of the attacks going on today. You know that we live in a state here that has rampant attacks on the sanctity of life, on marriage, and on children, and these types of things. But I've also noticed that not all people who love God and who love life know as much as they think. We have one thing that we incorporated in 2019 is something we call our truth test. I'll give you our website later on that you could actually take the truth test if you like. It's a simple 10-question test about the abortion laws in the United States. And we've had people taking this test every month since 2019 till now. I get responses all the time. These are good people, mostly good pro-life people. Like many of you, not one person has gotten 100% on that test. Well, that's by design. That doesn't mean that they are somehow, that these are somehow people that, are not on the right side or anything like that at all. It's confusion. We're in a time of such confusion that even people on the right side don't even know where to look and what's going on around them. And this brings other questions. Why do the same people that seem to support expansive abortion and hypersexualization of our children in schools seem to also support rampant drug use? Why does it so happen that while this is all going on, we have a church that is largely silent, not entirely? Why does there seem to be a direct correlation between our holy priests who try to speak boldly about the things I'm talking about right now and their propensity to be taken out of service? There is a good priest that I know in Chicago, many of you know him, who has told me to my face in the last year that if he were to do too much pro-life activity, that he would be taken out of service. Why are most of our highest leaders in the church silent on a lot of these subjects I'm speaking about right now? Now, we must answer these questions if we're going to be in a position to fight. Because otherwise, we would find ourselves, no doubt, being comparable to a soldier on a battlefield who doesn't even know he's at war. What are we going to do? That isn't going to work. So we must assess the battlefield. And I don't well, some of the things I'm going to go through now in terms of sanctity of life attacks, I want to summarize really what these attacks are in the state. And I don't mean to do so to bring about a state of despair, rather to prepare us for a precise response. Now, with abortion in Illinois, although many pro-life people have now do realize this, but abortion is legal up to birth, up to the moment of birth. That is a fact. And this evil surgery, did you know, no longer requires physicians who've gone to medical school to perform this evil surgical procedure. There are no health inspections on the abortion clinics. And that bears some particular examination, because I'm going to read to you. The only reason I came across this is because the clinic that we're predominantly praying at right now has we were able to do a FOIA request, and through the Freedom of Information Act obtained information that a woman who had gone to the American Women's Medical Center on Western Avenue had a very serious infection following the clinic. Let me read just a small excerpt of that to you so you can see what we're talking about here. Based on document review and interview, it was determined that the facility failed to ensure that an infection control plan or program was fully implemented by failing to ensure to follow the manufacturer's instruction for use to perform high-level disinfection on the ultrasound machine used to conduct vaginal ultrasounds. This potentially placed all patients that required an ultrasound at risk for infection and communicable diseases. No health inspections at the abortion clinics. Did you know that the abortionists have almost total immunity? Let me highlight just what I mean by that. An abortionist that performs an abortion procedure on a woman who is not pregnant cannot be held liable. Did you know that? Let me read to you a small excerpt from Senate Bill 25, which passed in 2019. Where a physician has been found upon complaint and investigation of the department, and after hearing to have performed an abortion procedure in a willful and wanton manner upon a woman who was not pregnant at the time such abortion procedure was performed, the department shall not revoke the license of such physicians. Abortion is fully subsidized, as I mentioned, thanks to the House Bill 40, which passed in 2017. A woman from Indiana or out of state can come to Illinois to receive a free abortion that we will pay for using our hard-earned wages, through our tax dollars, of course. And finally, SB 1909, Senate Bill 1909, which will surely make its way back, if you're not familiar, it will make its way back into the general hearings here in Illinois, has sought to impose sanctions upon Pregnancy Center Network. We have at least one or more people here that I know are very involved in the Pregnancy Center Network. God bless you. Thank you for your work. Impose harsh sanctions upon them, and potentially impose a $50,000 fine on people like me who stand out at the abortion clinics and try to counsel the moms and sometimes just pray. Now, the abortion process begins long before the mom gets to the clinic. It begins tragically at the age where children are going to kindergarten. Now, we've all heard, I think, a lot of us have heard about bad books in the public schools. Yeah, that is here, but no, Illinois has gone far beyond bad books in the school. They have something referred to as comprehensive sexual education. And if you're not familiar, this heinous program begins at kindergarten. Comprehensive sexual education uses graphic imagery to demonstrate to these precious young children how to become sexually active well before they even reach high school. It promotes regular, casual sexual engagement and promotes gender fluidity and denies gender altogether. I'm going to read you just a tiny little excerpt from the 6th grade curriculum. This was given to me by a mother who I was trying to help expose some of this comprehensive sexual education that I'm speaking to you about right now. During the 6th grade year, the child shall define sexual identity and explain a range of identities related to sexual orientation. Example, heterosexual, bisexual, lesbian, gay, queer, two-spirit, I don't know what that is, asexual, and pansexual. And that process begins at kindergarten. You see, the poor moms that have been lied to, they've been indoctrinated and trained sadly, to come to that clinic long before they even got there. This process has been going on a long time. In fact, if you're not familiar, the comprehensive sexual education I'm speaking about began with a man that is often referred to as a monster named Alfred Kinsey. And Hollywood lauded Mr. Kinsey in recent years, where they filmed starring Liam Neeson, where Kinsey was portrayed as a man ahead of his times, as a liberator, a freer of the human spirit. But Mr. Kinsey experimented on young people. Mr. Kinsey used young people to experiment with them in sexual behavior, to form these broken and demonic and evil theories about sexual education. That work that he did, if you can even call it that, later became the SICUS organization, which is Sexual Education for Social Change. I wonder if you know who some of the chief financiers are, and I'm connecting some dots here, so please pay attention. The chief financiers of comprehensive sexual education are, let me read you just a few of their names: the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, HIV.gov, Human Rights Campaign, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, Sexual Violence Research Initiative, SICUS, Sexual Education for Social Change, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Women for Women International. You're very bright people, and you're connecting those dots, and I'm trying to help us do that here today, because again, we have to assess the battlefield. We have to know what we're up against. We have to know what they're doing to our people and our children. Liberal and perverse view of human sexuality in order to dissolve the nuclear family and reduce the population for a profit. That's the mission. That is the mission they have. And in case that doesn't work, they've got a couple of extra attacks that they've launched at us, such as, I mentioned earlier, the open promotion of rampant drug use. Let me read you a small tidbit from our governor himself that was published this year in January 2023 about the open drug use policies that have been employed in Illinois since began in 2020. For the year, Illinois adult use cannabis dispensaries sold $1.5 billion worth of product, an increase of more than 12% from 2021. There are currently 113 adult use cannabis dispensaries in Illinois, including the first 3 social equity dispensaries that opened their doors in 2022. When I signed the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act into law in 2019, we set out an ambitious goal to create the most equitable and economically prosperous cannabis industry in the nation. Our data from 2022 shows that we are well on our way towards making that idea a reality, said Governor Pritzker. So in case indoctrination and the training beginning at kindergarten level doesn't work, they've tried to numb our poor innocent children that go to the public schools so that would numb their sensitivity to all of these attacks they're launching against these poor little ones. But there's a final element in what I call the unholy triad that is absolutely critical for all of this to work. And that is, where a lot of us come in, a silent church. The church must concede authority for them to employ their plan. It's critical. And let me ask you a question, because most of us have come across this. It's been proven now that the FBI has particularly targeted Catholic churches, especially those that celebrate the Tridentine Mass. But how would lawmakers, who are mostly spiritually blind, biblically uneducated, how would they know that it's the Catholic Church in particular that they have to take action against? How would they know that? And the answer is quite simple. Because even a group of several pastors, individual pastors who might speak out against these travesties, and those pastors do exist, that is happening, but they can be ignored. But a bold rebuke from the universal church, that might be a little harder to tackle. And they know that. They're fully aware of that. Now, how do we know that we've been abandoned? You know, I'm making this claim that I feel so certain about it, and of course I am a traditional Catholic just like you, so I don't want to cut off the branch that I'm sitting on right now, but why do I feel like that there's this abandonment of this silent church? And I'm sorry to say, but I was convinced of that in 2020 when I saw that the mosques in Illinois were full and no one spoke out. When I saw that the abortion centers in Illinois were full. In fact, I spent a lot of my time counseling and watched that clinic close in 2021 during this very time period when our churches had just been reopened, if at all. Some of them were still not open yet. And yet, while Home Depot was full of landscaping purchases, the sacraments were deemed non-essential. And I've heard very few cardinals speak out against this, but I do want to highlight one godly and saintly cardinal, Cardinal Sarah, who has rebuked this response and has said boldly that this was a great mistake. To deem the sacraments, the most beautiful thing we've been given, as non-essential. But now, friends, this has all been very negative, I know, but I want to begin to turn the corner a little bit. And I do so on this point of abandonment that I've highlighted. There is a joy and a beauty in this abandonment. I purposely left the silent church and the unholy triad for the last point that I wanted to bring up, because this abandonment is an occupational hazard of sanctity, and some of you may know what I'm talking about. I had to take you through all of the gore and the insanity and the disgustingness and ugliness that you see in the state, even though some of that are things that I know that you do already know, some of it you may not have. But I had to take you through that first, before by God's grace we can come to some sort of response, some Christian godly response. You see, we must be abandoned to cooperate with God in his plan for redemption. And we don't need to look too far to see that we're not the first people that have felt this way. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan, but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed his day, and he said, let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, a man child is conceived. Let that day be turned into darkness. Let not God regard it from above, and let not the light shine upon it. Job chapter 3. After all our exertions to mortify ourselves in our actions and passions, our success will not be perfect or even great until God himself shall do it for us in the purgation of the obscure night. St. John of the Cross, the dark night of the soul. Oh God, my God, look upon me. Why hast thou forsaken me? Far from my salvation are the words of my sins. The Psalms. And finally, and about the ninth hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? So you see, friends, now that we know all of these attacks work in concert, and that our abandonment is a necessary part of the redemption process, only now can we move forward and assess what must be done. Now, I'd like to turn to Ohio for just a moment, because it was mentioned, I know the Catholic Citizens of Illinois have discussed this, and it does bear some relevance in our response. Now, if you're not familiar with what's going on in Ohio, it's particularly relevant for Illinois citizens. Ohio is in a unique pro-life battle right now. And it's important to remember, Ohio is a state that was very similar to Illinois in terms of abortion. Ohio had as many as 45,000 abortions a year, which is not that much different than what we have right now in Illinois. Not that much different. However, when the Dobbs case came along and Roe fell, that enacted a 6-week ban on abortions in Ohio. And since then, sadly, an injunction was enacted which lifted that ban and brought it to a 22-week ban on abortions. So there are still abortion clinics, not a ton of them, but there are still abortion clinics operating in the state of Ohio currently. But then in August, last month, the Joint Resolution 2 was proposed. Now, what this Joint Resolution did, if you're not familiar, was allowed for a 50% plus one majority vote to amend the Constitution in Ohio, as opposed to the 60% bar that was there prior, making it much more difficult to, let's say, for example, codify something like abortion up to birth, like what we have here in Illinois. But Ohio is nervous. I'd like to read you just a small excerpt from a communication strategist with the ACLU Ohio, so you can see what I mean. We are at a crossroads, writes Ms. Martinez. Over the next few months, Ohio has the opportunity to become a state that protects reproductive freedom. It's imperative that we, the people, act now, while we still have the chance. For the last several months, Ohioans have been collecting signatures to get reproductive freedom on the November 2023 ballot through the citizen-led initiative process. Once the signatures are validated, voters will have the chance to enshrine abortion protections into our state constitution, meaning Ohioans will be able to make reproductive health care decisions with their doctors without interference from government and extremist politicians. So how did we get here, Ms. Martinez asks. What's at stake? Right now, the future of abortion access in Ohio is hazy at best, bleak and grim at worst. Currently, abortion access in Ohio is hanging by a thread. Ohio, not that long ago, had as many abortions as Illinois, and Ms. Martinez believes it is now hanging by a thread. And I think she's right. So, why else is this interesting? It's not only a point of hope for us here in Illinois. It's not good that the joint resolution passed, making it easier to codify expansive abortion, but it's good because we can see that a state that was as expansive in terms of the attacks on life as Illinois is now, in their own words, hanging by a thread. Now, Illinoisans ought to pay particular attention to two of the tactics that they've used in Ohio that are used here often, which I call diversion and sensationalism. Sensationalism goes something like this. If abortion is outlawed, many women will die. Now, I came across this as I sort of picked a fight with a lady named Maria Peterson who was running in the district where I live, up in the North Barrington area. She was running against Dan McConchie, a good pro-life warrior who has held office there for many years, actually. And Maria Peterson had such an interesting campaign. You already know how expansive the laws are here in Illinois, and yet her campaign signs said, vote for Maria Peterson for choice. And I thought this was just so peculiar. I mean, why would you need to base your campaign on that here in Illinois? What more expansive measure could you have in Illinois? Infanticide, I suppose. There isn't anything else left. It's up to the moment of birth, and we're forced to pay for it, and you dare not even speak out. That's next on the docket. Yet she based her whole campaign here on choice. So when you dug deeper, I had actually gone into a pro-abortion rally and interviewed many of the people that were actually holding signs for Maria Peterson, and upon interviewing some of these people, covertly of course, I was able to determine that they truly believed abortion was hanging by a thread here in Illinois, that women will die if they don't hang on to leaders like Maria Peterson. Sensationalism. This tactic is used. That same tactic was used in Ohio, and they're going to use it again in November. So be aware of that here in Illinois when you see that constant tagline. If abortion is limited, women will die, even though it's legal up to the moment of birth, with every protection in the book. And then finally, diversion. You know, this Senate joint resolution in Ohio was largely framed as a measure to protect the Constitution. Like, we don't want to make it too difficult to amend the Constitution if necessary. This is a constitutional protective measure, therefore it must be voted on. This was a measure all about abortion that was labeled as something that had nothing to do with abortion. And unfortunately, that did pass, by the way, if you weren't aware of that. So now it only requires, it would be easier to codify a pro-abortion law in Ohio because of this. But I suspect a lot of the pro-life people, and this has happened here in Illinois as well, have largely, we tend to fall asleep at the wheel very quickly. We're providing for our families. We're homeschooling our children. We're doing all these things. It is challenging. I understand. And all of you are doing all of these types of things. We're helping our churches, etc., doing these kinds of things. And they know that. So, in Illinois, the most expansive abortion law, Senate Bill 25, the finishing touches on that law were completed on Memorial Day weekend in 2019. They do this for a reason. We have to be aware of that. We have to know the tactics and strategies of the evildoers that promote these things so we can look out for them. Diversion and sensationalism. But I will say, again, I do think that Ohio is more a point of hope for us here in Illinois. A state which had abortion procedures to nearly the same extent as here as Illinois is now hanging by a thread. And that should give us cause for hope. But I don't think that our hope can just rely on legislative measures. I think that would be dangerous for us. No, God wants something else. He's looking for something much deeper and richer from us. What are we to do? We have an unholy triad. Attacks on life that are rampant. An education system that raises innocent young women to come to that abortion clinic long before they even get there. And a church that is largely silent, not completely. I do know we have many good shepherds still that do exist, but very silent in large places, especially in certain areas of the world in this country, and Illinois in particular. We are not David. We are not Goliath. We are David. And we feel abandoned. But can you imagine the predicament that the abortion industry of Illinois would have if 50 to 100 people gathered at an abortion clinic at one time, and they did so regularly, prayerfully, peacefully? Do you know the predicament they would have in their hands? Because I do. Because in 2015, that's exactly what happened. The Albany Park Family Planning Associates Clinic had a 24-hour prayer vigil going on at their entrance. There were people praying at 2 a.m. at this clinic. I think a lot of you know what happened. The clinic closed while that was going on. And I saw it happen in 2021 at the Family Planning Associates Clinic on Milwaukee Avenue. Our churches had been closed. It was very difficult to get people to come out to the sidewalk, but we slowly built up the effort after that first year. And we had people coming out, and 30 to 50 people even at times. And guess what? The clinic closed. They were on their heels. Not because of anything special that we were doing. We weren't being aggressive or anything like that at all, but because we brought people to come and pray at a clinic entrance, at a place of death. See, God can use that witness, and He did. And we watched the clinic close as we were out there counseling and praying, filing out their goods. What a glorious day that was. What a glorious day that must have been in heaven, to watch a place of death close because some of God's people wanted to boldly cooperate with Him. Did you know that the closure of almost every abortion clinic in Illinois for many years now was preceded by a vigorous prayer vigil effort going outside the front door? I can throw a stone from one church in Chicago to the next one. We have enough people to bear witness to the sanctity of life boldly. Are we really engaged? Do we need our pastor's permission? If they're not supportive, and some are, but do we need their permission to fight the culture of death boldly? I don't think so. No, we don't. No, we have God's permission to do that. We have God's permission to go out boldly on the sidewalks and proclaim life peacefully, prayerfully. They want us to be aggressive. What do we want? That's not our nature. That's not what we were built for. We were built for something much greater. We were built to go out and rely on God and divine aid to come and rescue us in this place of death that we happen to live in here. You know, a lot of people are saying in the economy right now that there's still too few dollars chasing too few goods. And I like to say, yeah, there's too much grace being squandered because not enough people want to pick it up and take it. And that's exactly what's going on. There's so much grace going around, more than dollars, that nobody wants. Now I know that many people here in this room do. So I know my audience. But we have to realize that that's what's going on around us. So what we can do today, even if we are all feeling strongly about all the things that I'm talking about right now, is we have to go out and make disciples within our parishes and our churches. Is our pro-life, do we have a pro-life committee? Are they doing anything? Are they just meeting and having coffee? Or are they asking, what bold thing can we do next month? How about we go out to the 40 Days for Life Vigil and pack that sidewalk and we'll pray. We can even leave our signs behind if we don't have any, but we're going to go out there and we're going to pray for 2 solid hours. Some of the men will get on their knees. What a beautiful thing it is, and I've seen it, to see a sidewalk lined with men on their knees praying the rosary at a place of death. Oh, such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing. That's what we need. That's what God is waiting for. He wants us to be contemplatives who take action. That's what He wants. He doesn't want us to be mired in frustration and anguish and despair. He wants us to be contemplatives who take action. Have we adequately turned to God with bold request? Now I want to present to you some ways that you can do that. I said I had solutions. And they predominantly really surround around the idea of asking for divine aid. Again, we are the David, not the Goliath. But I have ways that you can do that. And this is a small enough crowd that I can easily share that with you after this talk today. The first Saturdays for Life effort was mentioned before. We've dedicated that effort to Our Lady's request to keep the Saturdays, hold the Saturdays dear and special. So what we meet at the American Women's Medical Center, every first Saturday of the month, we've been doing so for nearly a year. For 1 hour of prayer, we offer 15 minutes of meditation on the joyful mysteries as Our Lady asked. We pray the rosary, and we hold that silent period for 15 minutes every month. And we do so diligently. And all of us get that whisper in the ear while we're out there. You're wasting your time. But you know where that comes from, don't you? So we put that aside, and we come out there, and we hold that effort. We hold that effort regularly. So I encourage you to join that. Our Go Public for Life campaign, which just happened a couple of weeks ago, had people praying simultaneously at 11 abortion clinics across the whole state, from Carbondale all the way to Waukegan. And I'm sure that they were whispered as well. All the good gatherers that came had that whisper in the ear, you're wasting your time. No, we are not. No, we are not. 40 Days for Life will start on September 27th of this month. I'll be leading the Chicago effort. There are other efforts in the Chicagoland area. We need people to come out, and especially young people. There aren't enough young men coming out to the clinics. They can come, even a day a month, even for an hour. Yes, they can do it. It is necessary. I encourage you to go back to your parishes and spread the word. They need people to come and pray. Can you do it? Ask the question. Ask your pastors for support. Some of them do want to support our efforts, but they don't know how to. Or maybe they need someone else. Maybe they are being pressured by other leaders that don't want them to be too pro-life, but they need someone that will step up and say, you know what, I'll be the point of contact, Father. I will go out and do the work. If you can just help me in a few small ways. Maybe that's all they need. Go ask. Don't be afraid. Stay for an extra 10 minutes after the Mass and talk to your priest. Ask them for help. I also encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. It's got a small following. Just search Joe Lazar on my YouTube channel. I try to put out videos that touch on subjects that no one else is talking about, like putting out a FOIA request, a FOIA Freedom of Information Act finding that we find from an abortion clinic that the other side doesn't want to get out. You can help me spread that information. I encourage you to go there and do that. We have been attacked and abandoned because He loves us. Have we done all that we can? That is the question we must ask. I'd like to close out with a Our Father in our native tongue, Aramaic, because you may not have heard it before. It's very beautiful. And then I certainly have time for questions, and I'd love to hear any questions that you have. So I'll begin with the sign of the cross in the Assyrian language. You can follow me in your hearts. Nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Baba de Bishmea, Payashkucha Shimuch, Echimel Kutach, Hawarizayach, Dahi de Bishmea, Ubara, Velen Nachmed, Senkanin, Yoma Bioma, Ushvoklen Genachen, Dahu de Bachnan, Ushvoklen will any Dwitten, Genachabian, Vritlan, Jurabe, Ide, Pasilan, Bisha, Shemit Baba, Uprona, Ruhat Kutsha, Alacha. Amen. And thank you. So, I'd like to invite you to ask any questions about how you can get involved or anything at all. If you think that I can answer any of your questions, I'd like to allow some time for that now. Hopefully that's okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm from Green County. We don't have any abortion centers up there, and we want to keep it out.
Where is that?
It's about, it's northwest. Woodstock, Crystal Lake.
Yes.
We travel to Aurora with our group to pray outside Planned Parenthood. But my question is, there's no doubt in my mind that it's a spiritual battle, and that is so important. Has there been any consideration to take this prayer, in addition to the pregnancy resource centers, to pray outside the county board meetings, the city council meetings, and have this pro-life presence, at the government level? I mean, they don't necessarily see the people at the Planned Parenthood, but if we were in their face before their meeting, knowing that we're voters.
I think that is a wonderful and awesome idea. And in fact, so much so, Ma'am, I'd love to talk more about that today. I think that is worth exploring. That's been done, but not nearly to the extent that I think that you're talking about. And I think you're really onto something when you say that. See, because they want us to be aggressive. They want us to go out and, I mean, you know, regardless of what narratives you've heard, what you believe, they want us to appear the way that the January 6th event is portrayed. They want us to be portrayed that way. And so for us to go out to these public places, as you say, but be completely public, prayerful and peaceful, is counter to their narrative. And more importantly, it's a demonstration to God that we're asking for divine aid. That's the more important part. And He will deliver when enough come out and do what you're describing. And I know that He will deliver. I'm certain of it. So yes, I'd like to talk more about that to see if we can coordinate that more. Thank you. That's a great question. Yes, ma'am.
When you're talking about having different churches, and I met in the planning center on Washington, so been there for 15 years. But at any rate, we now have a group called Love Life that is showing up there. The shows are limited basically because it's worse in Chicago right now. And it's working. I mean, they have now, last time there were 5 policemen on bikes and 2 squad cars because we're so dangerous. And they've actually, unfortunately, bullied Love Life to stand off another block away. You know, that we're going to try and get them to be braver and come back. But at any rate, it has agitated them to have that presence there. And what they do is they go to a different church every week, and they have the pastor talk about pro-life at one of the the services the week before. And then they get people to join together. Sometimes they have quite a large group, sometimes it's smaller. And then some of them are become counselors during the week out there. So it's really been a pretty successful thing. So it's one way maybe if we can try to get different churches to commit to that one Saturday or whatever, that way then it's not asking them for too much.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the Love Life group because I do know Juan, who leads the group. And I love what they're doing. They are boldly coming out. They appear, at least from the outside, to be joyful and upbeat and non-aggressive. And you can tell me if I'm wrong on that. Am I wrong about that?
No.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Now, I will say, I don't want to be negative about their efforts because I support what they're doing. They're resistant to work with Catholics. I will tell you that. The Love Life group is resistant. I've been told that personally, so I can say that. But what they're doing is no doubt exactly what the abortion industry of Illinois doesn't want. I mean, that's why Senate Bill 1909 is being proposed, and it will come up again. So, to your question, I'm glad you're going there, by the way. Thank you. You're probably going there, praying your rosary, and bringing these great devotions there, and I'm thankful for that. I think that's wonderful. I do think Love Life provides a template for what it should look like. As you say, could we get one clinic, one parish to focus on one parish? So I want to draw on that question, part of your question, because I think we've also noticed that there have been times when people have been attacked if they're out there praying in small numbers or by themselves. And one way we've tried to cope with that is with these events, First Saturdays for Life. Everyone gathered the same day at the same time. That makes it very difficult for them to do that. So what I think might be worth doing as Catholics, if you'd be willing to gather around an effort like First Saturdays for Life, if you have a parish that you could bring to a place to do that, I would encourage you to do that. Come out with us, and let's start there. Let's fill the sidewalk at the same day, at the same time with people praying, doing nothing more than that necessarily. Maybe sidewalk counseling at some point is what we work up to. But what if we gather around one thing? Let the Love Life group continue to bring what they're doing there. If they're resistant to working with us, that's fine. We encourage them to keep doing that. Let them. They're still a thorn in the side of hell, and that is a good thing. So why don't we, as Catholics, try to we remain receptive to working with anyone who wants to rebuke the culture of death. That we should do. But we can gather together in one place at the same time. I would like to provide you, ma'am, with First Saturdays for Life effort information so that you could, if you could help me bring people from your parish there. We do need more people. We have about 72 people signed up for it, but we never get 72 at one time. It could be 10, and I've seen more than 30, but it's usually somewhere in between. We need to build it up. There was another question. Yes, ma'am.
Not so much a question, but dealing with intimidation from the police. Now, I'm with Linda Winkle on Saturday mornings, and it seems like the police are more or less taking sides at different ends. So the point is, these people that had to move their truck from one place to another, we need to know how to file complaints about this and how to deal with intimidation. What do we do if this happens? How do we deal with it? Because a police officer, a friend of mine is very pro-life, said, why aren't people filing complaints? You should know how to file them, when to do it, when it's appropriate, how you get the badge number, how you get the, the license plate of the police car. But I think because we're gonna have to be dealing with more intimidation, that we need to know how to cope with that.
Sure. I've had a bottle thrown at me at the clinic. I did file a complaint. I did. It took me a while. The police were very helpful. And I have to say, this is just my experience, the Chicago police have been completely helpful with me from day one. They've never given me a hard time. Doesn't mean that doesn't occur. But if you're having trouble getting that accomplished, I would contact the Thomas More Society, because they're the pros at dealing with this. And I do think if it was an issue of you not being able to engage in your free speech rights, then they would take that note serious. They would respond to you. I believe they would. I hope that's a good response, because they'll really be the best ones to help you with that, is the Thomas More Society. I hope that's helpful. And you could even ask particularly for Peter Breen. He's responded to things that I've had from him in the past that have been very helpful.
I'd like to bring up another point. Have you heard that they're trying to do in Florida? They're trying to change the state constitution there and codify Roe v. Wade. That was announced yesterday. Have you heard about that?
I have not. I'm glad you brought it up. I would suspect they will use the typical tactics of sensationalism and diversion. I will look out for that. I was not aware of that. Nick, you had a question, I thought.
I did.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I was at the Go Public for Life on the 26th at the Des Plaines clinic there, American Women's Center, something. But I can say that I was surprised in a way. I mean, we had over 50 people on the other side of the street, and the first surprise I had was the vast majority. I mean, people do see you. I mean, especially with that kind of group. Even if there's no one walking in and out of that clinic, just the number of cars going by, that's a powerful witness to them. And I was surprised because the vast majority of those cars were honking in our favor and giving us like the thumbs up as they drove by, which I was surprised because I thought, well, we're in Illinois, and this is like, the pro-life, or, the pro-choice state. So I was surprised by that. Obviously the death squads were watching us, across the street. We were obviously praying for them. But I just came away feeling like this did tremendous good. We were out there an hour and a half, prayed the rosary, had a period of silence, and then Claudia, who organized this with you, had people come up and speak, give a testimony of how their pro-life witness outside of this abortion clinic has borne fruit, and that was incredible too. Just hearing some of the stories. A gentleman got up and talked about, I think he was a regular there, about a young lady who he turned away. And this was 20 years ago, and now he's in contact with her and her 20-year-old son, who she, gave life, chose to. So I do get the sense. So that's just my observation. Now my question is, you mentioned how there are closings as a direct result of these prayer interventions. And somebody told me on the 26th that there's less abortion clinics in Illinois than pregnancy centers.
Significantly less, even in this environment. I'll give you a rough number. Go ahead.
Just-
yeah, go ahead.
How does that
They're not because of the out-of-state people coming in. They're about stable. The last number I saw was about 50,000. There's about 50,000 abortions a year, just over that in Illinois. That's the last figure that I saw. So the out-of-state abortions present about less than a fifth of that. But if you take that out, you're left with still over 40,000. So, you know, the thing is, a lot of the surrounding states are somewhat limited right now, so there's only so many to draw from. Illinois is an island. It's become the abortion island, sadly, tragically. And to your point about the clinics versus the pregnancy centers, there's about a little over, more than 30, less than 40 abortion clinics in the state right now that we know of, and there's almost 100 pregnancy resource centers. Those are built on donations and volunteer work. Talk about, you know, God showing us what He will do for us if we're willing to rise to the occasion.
Are the people seeking abortion, are they going to, are there mega centers that get most people, or?
Abortion centers wise, Aurora, no doubt, and then the Carbondale Clinic, no doubt. Those are the mega centers. The place we're primarily praying at is a small non-Planned Parenthood clinic, Family Planning Associates. So that is their staple business, though. I mean, every single mom I've seen coming in is coming in for that. And I've talked to my share. Tragically, if you go there on a Wednesday, you have no problem sidewalk counseling. I hate to say that, but I only say it to encourage you to consider coming, because I need people to do it. None of us can do it all the time, but together, we can do a lot, actually. If each person could give one day a month to come and pray or counsel at a clinic, do you know what we could do with that? Yeah, a lot. That's what we need. And I know a lot of you are engaged and active, I'm aware of that, so many of you are probably already doing this, I'm already hearing that. But please go back to your parishes, or I encourage you to talk to me after this and find out how we can work together. Can I contact someone at your Respect Life committee and get them fired up so they can come out to 40 Days for Life? Let's fill the sidewalk up. Let's do it. Things will happen. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
What did you say your YouTube channel was again?
Yeah, just search my name, Joe Lazar, on YouTube.
Lazar.
Either search my name or Vision 2020. You'd find it. 2020, like the 2020 vision, like the numbers. You should find it. If you don't, let me know. I'm sure that I'm not supposed to be the most popular channel for a reason. You know. Sir, go ahead.
I have two observations. I spent 15 years going to a Black Baptist church on the south side of Chicago. Big church, 14,000 members. I stayed in touch with the guys there, who were deacons. One of the guys said to me last week, we talked about this, he said it's obvious that it's just a population control measure. I said, absolutely, this is not local people funding this. You know, we get deep in the weeds on this, all this we're talking about, Soros and all these other guys. And I kept that in the back of my head. Then I listened to a podcast, John Katz podcast, that was interviewing, I can't remember the guy's name. Who was the guy who was the chief of police in New York City during 9/11?
Bernie Carrick.
What's his name?
Bernie Carrick.
Yeah, that's it. He's now chief in Willow Springs. Was Chicago, and then he went to Willow Springs. So he talked about the fact that his daughter died from an overdose, drug overdose, and how in the last year there were 100,000 deaths in the United States from fentanyl. He
+1,
said
1:52 p.m.
more than
Five
the
notifications.
entire war in Vietnam. This is happening on an annual basis. So I'm listening to your
Sure. Where does this all go? Like, what I've thought many times, as many of you have, what would likely happen? Because, even I'm promoting this idea that we should beg God for divine aid here, and I of course think that. I think a lot of you agree. But does he ride in on the white horse and rescue us from all of this that you're talking about right now? And I don't think that he would, because we wouldn't learn our lesson if he did. It's out of his love for us that he knows that's not going to work. So he wants us to respond with action and beg him for divine aid in that action. But I will say that I think what you may see that would become a catalyst, I'm almost certain of it at this point, I told you about how the abortion clinics aren't inspected and how they have non-physicians performing these. And it seems inevitable to me. There will, and I don't hope for it, but I do suspect there will be some case or series of cases that come out about terrible tragedy that's happened at the clinics. And this one happens to break through the FOIA requests and becomes public knowledge. And when people see what's been building right below them, that they've been financing for years, it may take a catalyst like that. So what do I hope? My hope is that when that day comes, not that I hope for it, but I suspect it, that we would be bold and prayerful witness, and they're ready. That the society would look to the people that have been praying at the clinics all along and say, they had the answers. They were turning to God at this time. Now I see. That's all I can hope for. So, your connecting the dots is accurate, sir. We do see that. But we have to know that we're doing the best we can, that we're not passing up on that grace that God's trying to hand us. Can we bring a few conversions along the way before we get to this tragedy? I think so, and it's worth doing. Yes, sir? Yes?
I'd like to commend the young lady who suggested going to pray at city halls and county and other county buildings. But I also recommend we pray rosaries in plenty of locations like Old St. Pat's and Holy Name Cathedral. Try to encourage them to go on a pro-life distance. Old St. Pat's is walking distance from 659 Washington, but you won't see them taking that walk. The other issue is along the line, my wife Miriam has a lot of wisdom, and she says we have to start like these Satanists are doing at an early age. We have to teach chastity and purity and the beauty of coming to a marriage as a virgin. It sounds so countercultural, but it's God's plan. And I think there are ways of presenting that to young people to counteract, I don't know what the libraries and the schools would do if you brought in chastity materials, if they would ban those. Probably. But the point is to try to find ways to reach these young people and give them materials about the beauty of purity and chastity so they never have to make that choice about going to an abortion clinic. So that's preemptive kind of work that I think is important. But we don't have a lot of friends in the Archdiocese of Chicago. And you're right, I used to go to 659 Washington where these ladies go, and there could be 40 or 50 people there on any given Saturday. Where do they all go? So I think what you have in mind is so critical. We have to go back to our parishes, and like you say, if the pastor is willing, go for it. If he's not, then go directly to the people and start talking, because the people are there. Have they given up? Are they afraid? I don't know their motivations. Maybe they've been swallowed up by woke culture, but maybe they need to be stood up. Anyway,
You're
some
right.
thoughts.
You're right, and you know what, the attacks in the schools you talked about, it's easy, I think a lot of the people here, I think, if you might homeschool, your kids may go to a Catholic school where they're not exposed to that kind of thing, but I would encourage you, don't turn your back on the people you come across whose children go to public schools, because even though some of the parents have been apathetic and remiss to do anything about it, the children are completely innocent. They're like, they don't know any better. We do need to help those parents in public schools. We have done some work with that. I do have parents in the 220 and the 211 school districts that have approached me, and we've put some videos out exposing comprehensive sexual education. We've made the connection that all of you, I think, understand that that is a not only an indoctrination but a rearing to support the abortion network of Illinois. At some point, it's inevitable. At best, those children will end up engaging in premarital sex, contraception, living that type of lifestyle, and at worst, they will end up aborting their children or deny their God-given gender. And that's where a lot of the children, sadly, will end up in that situation, as you know. So don't forget to evangelize those around you who don't understand all of this. Yes, ma'am.
I think the gentleman made a very good point that there used to be many people praying at the abortion clinics, but that unfortunately many of them have gotten old. And what we need to do is get the youth groups, parishes, and things involved in going to pray at the abortion clinics. Because we were young when we did it, a lot of us, and did it a long time. But now, a lot of the people even that were doing it have died, and are older people, but the young people need to be taken into that role now by all our children and our grandchildren.
Thank you. Well, you know what I would encourage you to do? Approach your Knights Council. Ask the men. You know, I mean, not that they aren't doing many good things, but I mean, a knight has a prescribed mission. Where are they? Because I don't meet many of them. I don't want to be negative about the knights, because I am a knight, and I have had, there are bold councils that do come out and do a lot of this good work, but there are many that don't. And those are the young people you're talking about. We need the young men on the sidewalk. I want to fill the sidewalks with men on their knees at the clinics. I think it's a beautiful witness. We don't even need signs. Just give me the men. I'll take care of the rest. So you help me. You connect me. What parish do you belong to, ma'am? I'm curious.
St. John Cassius in the city.
Well, we do get a lot of men from there, as a lot of you know. So that's, we need more.
That's a real Catholic church.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I love it. But we need more. We need more, and maybe we need to, also put out some requests at other parishes. We need to make some calls. We all have friends that go to other parishes. We need to approach them and ask them, hey, is your Knights Council doing much? If not, I have someone who could use your help. Let me connect you with him, and I'll put them to work. We have work to do.
It might be possible also to give young people, those groups at the parishes, to give them maybe an award for someone who's attended prayer every week or has changed people's minds, and give them awards for being pro-life, for being visibly pro-life.
That's a beautiful idea. I think the Crusaders for Life have kind of tried to do that. They've made that like something to be proud of. And you are onto something there. We've talked about that. Thank you for bringing that up. That is a great idea. I need to explore that more, I think. You're right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a point. I'm talking to people that have previously been involved at the clinics, and they'll say, well, it doesn't do any good. I mean, these are practicing Catholics, might be traditional. What do you think is an appropriate response to that? Because I find that a hard one to break through. They said it doesn't do any good. Probably, I mean, the things that you talked about in terms of the success that we had, maybe there needs to be a flyer that's put out about the success that we had and not the failures.
I'm curious, Dolores, do you have a response to that? Because I think you do. I'd be curious what you would say.
I would like to say is that, okay, say we're at the abortion clinic on Wednesday. Nobody got saved, nobody turned around. But we have 6 people that cursed at us. And I think, if I see that as Jesus saying, those are the people you're supposed to pray for. It's like their hands are up, and it's like, that's the ones I want you to pray for. And I just was reading the other day how curses, if you pray for that person, the curse doesn't go to you, the blessing goes to them. So even if we don't save any babies there, the guy that says you're wasting your time, the guy that says you're stupid, you're idiots, you're this and that, he gives you the finger. How do you know that when you get to heaven, those people aren't gonna be there. And that maybe those kind of people are the ones we're praying for, and the escorts. So I think we're not just look at it as what happened today, but in the future, what your prayers may have done for that person that cursed you, if you can pray for them. So that's.
Thank you, Dolores. I know that their time is limited here, so I have to thank you all again for your time. God bless you all.
You're such an inspiration to us here in this room, and I know that you've been doing tremendous work and bringing people to the sidewalks that probably have never been there before, are hooked. Once you're there, you may never go back, and I speak from experience. So thank you, Joe. I want to wrap up. I know it's 2 o'clock, and a lot of you have things to do today. I really appreciate, on behalf of the organization, that you are here present with us today. We're blessed for that, and we will keep you posted on the October 13th luncheon, and as well as our banquet. So keep a lookout on our website and our emails. And if you're not signed up already, go to our website and get on our email list. And then lastly, about for the next 15 minutes, you're free to venerate the relic over there. Joe, I think, is going to linger around for a little bit for some more intimate questions. And I thank you so much. God bless.